Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
To preface this, it is a second-hand account from my mother, and she was genuinely scared about telling this story. So my extended family on my mother's side visit a place in New Zealand that is hella isolated from just about everything. There's a diesel generator that runs the whole place, which turns off at 11 p.m. every night. The only building of significance is a hunting lodge that is easily 200 years old. Basically, the whole thing is a massive long dining hall with a wide kitchen at the end. Surrounding this lodge is a series of rooms that are straight out of the 1920s. The whole place just reeks of spooky. There is stories about plenty of hauntings, some of which are from personal experience, and some stories from the old folks that are friends of my grandmother and grandfather. But those are stories for another time, providing you enjoyed this one. In the area surrounding this lodge is a series of caves, and to the west is some of the most windswept, cold, and inhospitable landscapes in New Zealand. There's about 1 kilometer of meter-tall toitoi, or razor grass, that separates these caves from the ocean, with the whole area being coated in a midnight black sand. Around this area, there are a bunch of caves that back into the mountainside with the aforementioned dunes on the other side. We used to go exploring there a lot, caving, etc. The caves were always changing because sand was swept in and out with winds and rain. Sometimes you would get a long way through, and other times you would find your passage blocked by a metric shit ton of sand that had not been there a few days earlier. Whenever we were in the caves, there was always a deep sense of foreboding that we would have done well to acknowledge and nope out of there. The whole area held significance to the Maori people. Supposedly it was somewhat of a holy site for them, and a few tribes lived in the surrounding area before the Pakeha came and fucked them up. Picture related, it is toitoi. Anyway, my mom and her siblings, as well as a few of their friends, were hiking around the area of the caves when they were around 16 or 17 and found a human skull in the dunes and a very old spearhead along with it. Excited, they took it back to the lodge and showed their parents, who were pretty disturbed by it at the time, and one of the Maori guys there gave them a good yelling at and told them that they should hurry back to where they found it and put it back right away. He said it was kino, meaning bad or wicked, to take someone's bones from their resting place, and that bad mana would come if they did not make it right with the spirits. The concept of mana in Maori culture is a lot like karma, along with telling my mom and her siblings that the whole area was tapu, or sacred to the Maori people. A number of years later, my brothers and I pieced together that it was an ancient Maori burial, where they would take someone who died and prop them up on their spear and leave them in the tide, where the fish would slowly eat them. That night, my mother's sister, my aunt, and her friends that she brought along decided they would have some fun and pull out a Ouija board. They were pretty into occult shit at the time and were probably looking for a good spook. The board itself was apparently impossibly smooth, carved from wood of some sort, yet shiny as if by the passing of thousands over its surface. Anyway, they set up candles and incense in one of the old spooky rooms where they were staying and went to town trying to summon spirits and then get them to answer questions. They eventually got it to work, and it started answering questions. They asked the spirits for predictions of the future. It said something along the lines of marriage and Devil's Day. Around 15 years later, my mom would meet my dad, who had a sister born on June 6, 1966. Spooky stuff. At this point, my mom noped the hell out of there and went to bed. Too spooky for me, right? Apparently, my aunt and her friends kept asking the spirit more questions, and the glass kept moving more and more violently until it started knocking over candles and the like. Easily faked, right? Then a force hit my aunt, and she hit her head on one of the coffee tables in the room. Story coming from friends of my aunt, told to my mother the next day. The friends tended to my aunt, who was out cold for a while, eyes rolling into the back of her head that we now know is a common sign of having a concussion, but they were spooked by it. They cleaned up all the Ouija board stuff and waited for my aunt to come to. When she woke up, she was acting strangely, not uncommon of someone who had been knocked out. She was moving strangely, walking with a weird gait despite saying she was fine. This was the 60s, mind you, and they were in the middle of nowhere. The only reason the place existed at all was because it was a hunting area. The next day, my mom's family are getting ready to leave because they used to go there over long weekends, so it was usually a short stay. They tried calling my aunt's name, but she did not respond to it. Eventually, they got her into the car and left to go home. When they did get home, my aunt wandered through the house as if she did not know where she was and then started following my mom everywhere she went. My aunt is about 2 years my mom's junior, and they were pretty close at the time, so my mom was pretty freaked out about her abnormal behavior, eventually just telling her to go to her room. That night, my aunt did not come down for dinner, just sat on her bed staring at the wall. Come morning, my mom had to go to work. She had finished school, and school had finished for the term. She worked at a florist's place that was always overly cold with a nice enough guy who was always a little strange running the shop. Since both my grandfather and grandmother had to go to work, the responsibility fell to my mom to take my aunt to work with her and keep an eye on her. The car ride there was completely silent. My mom got to work, and pretty much immediately my aunt went upstairs to where the creepy guy's house was. House on top, shop below sort of deal. My mom tried to call her down, but she would not. Throughout the day, she heard her sister occasionally talking to thin air and muttering under her breath. She stayed well away, but knew that no one else was up there. One way in, one way out sort of deal. The car ride home was also completely silent. 2 days after coming back from the lodge, my mom had to go to work again. But after the events of the previous day, she was getting well beyond spooked. She told her sister to stay home and not doing anything stupid, obviously not wanting her anywhere near her with the spooky shit that was going down. Instead of staying in the house, her sister followed her outside. Just as my mom was getting ready to reverse out of the driveway, my aunt started screaming at her in an indistinguishable language. Not knowing what to do, my mom goes to back out of the driveway, and my aunt violently slams her open hands onto the hood of the car, screaming the whole time and staring into my mom's eyes, her face contorted into the visage of total rage. My mom goes to floor it, but the clutch in her car keeps whining, as if the car was rooted in place. Eventually, she stops trying to escape and puts the car into neutral, puts on her handbrake, and lets her sister into the car. As her sister is letting go of the hood of the car, it lurches back slightly, like you do when your car does when you take off the foot brake, when the handbrake is on and the car is on a hill. She was pretty convinced her sister, or whatever her sister had become, was holding the car in place. She gets into the passenger's side seat and stares straight ahead, breathing heavily. My mom drives to work with her sister in the car seat next to her. When they arrive at the shop, her sister bolts for the stairs again with a strange run, going upstairs and sitting on the guy's bed. The creepy guy is pretty chill most of the time and does not get up in arms about it. Same things happen that happened yesterday, except this time her sister is talking very loudly in a rasping, inhuman tongue. When my mom's shift ends, she goes to the stairs and calls her sister's name. She hears stomping before her sister's face appears at the top, contorted with rage and eyes wide. She screams, "My name is Andrea," at my mother before stomping down the stairs. The car ride home is silent, with the exception of my aunt occasionally whispering gibberish that was too quiet for my mom to hear distinctly. That night, my mom talks to my grandmother and grandfather about how weird my aunt has been acting. The talking, the car, etc. And my grandparents are worried but do not do anything, saying if she has not gotten better in a couple days, they would take her to the doctor. That sort of attitude was common at the time with families that did not have much money to spare. Running out of options, my mom calls the local Baptist church. While my family are not usually religious, my mom did not know what else to do, so she asked them in hushed tones about getting an exorcism on her sister. The next day, my mom tells her sister that she is going to work again despite having the day off. Her sister quickly walks to her car and waits there for around 20 minutes before my mom comes outside. My aunt is in the passenger seat staring straight ahead without any expression. As my mom gets into the car, her head snaps round to look at her and her eyes briefly flash with intense hatred. They begin driving in a different direction from the florist's, but my aunt does not say anything at all, just stares ahead without emotion. They pull up outside the church and the exorcist is there waiting with another priestly-type person. My aunt starts shifting back and forth in her seat with teeth clenched. She snaps her head around to look at my mother again with malice-filled eyes. My mom nopes the fuck out of the car before my aunt starts flailing in her direction. The priestly types pull my aunt from the car, both of them visibly sweating from the exertion which would not have been expected from a skinny 15-year-old girl. Once inside the church, her sister starts screaming incoherently, but my mum makes out something in between the incoherent gibberish about shadows and blackened wings. The priest forced my aunt to her knees in front of the altar, one of them holding her down while the other spoke in what my mum could only make out as Latin. It was a reasonably warm day and the sun was out, but as soon as the priest started reading, the room went cold as ice and gales of wind started blowing through the church. My aunt continued screaming in a rasping, cold tongue that no one could decipher. The priest raised his voice over my aunt's screams and continued spouting verses of Latin before switching to a language that sounded a lot like Hebrew. Immediately after he stopped speaking, a shadow fell over the room which promptly vanished along with the howling winds and bitter cold. My aunt collapsed to the ground and lay there for a long while before groggily coming to. She had no recollection of the past 3 days, with the exception of feeling an extreme cold when she hit her head on the coffee table, like being chilled to the bone. My aunt apparently has not been the same since, and lived in a halfway house for a number of years and struggled with various drug addictions for a very long time. Sorry if it is not a great story. True ones rarely are.
I have been possessed before. It is not like you see on The Exorcist, but it is still a freaky experience. It started off as seeing things out the corner of my eye and hearing whispering, then it turned into thoughts that I know for a fact were not mine. After about a few weeks, I was making small involuntary actions and constantly had the feeling of being watched late at night. It was about a total of 2 months after the initial possession that I suddenly began to black out and later find myself somewhere totally different, and people asking me why I was acting differently. Later on, it caused me to scare away a close friend. I loved her deeply. I researched what was going on for days on end, often losing sleep. It was later when I was explaining my situation to a few of my spiritual friends that I was told to go to my local church and talk to the clergy. After describing my problem to them, along with occasionally blanking out then waking up a few seconds later, they told me that I was possessed. At first I thought it was bullshit, but everything else was a dead end. The exorcism process itself I could not remember much of. It felt like my body was on fire and the world was spinning, and someone was poking cotton swabs a bit too deep into my ears. I woke up a few hours later with the local priest sitting next to me, quietly muttering verses from his Bible. I felt like I was completely drained out of energy, but the voices and figures in the corner of my eye were all gone. For about a week I stayed home. I felt like crap physically, but I was glad that whatever was inside of me was gone. It felt like a shadow that was hanging over me had been burnt away by sunlight, and I was free to carry on with life.
Be me age 15, moving into a new big house with my family. It is great. Lots of room. Several rooms to explore. 3 months into living in the house, we begin to notice strange things. Chairs are always slightly out of place when we come back to the house. Noises and creaks around the house at night. One night we heard a bang. Father gets me and we go down to investigate armed with baseball bats. One of the chairs had moved across the dining room and fell over. Cold sweat pours from my forehead. Search the house all night and call the police to help. Police tell us that it was probably a burglar that ran when he messed up. Few weeks pass with no incidents. Around the same time again, 11 p.m., I heard it. Muffled but fast footsteps heard outside my room and down the hallway. Scared shitless and praying that it is one of my family members. Terrible night's sleep and ask family if any of them were walking around the house at 11. No anon. My stomach turns. A few more nights later, it happens again at the same time. Muffled footsteps outside the room. The sound stops outside my room. I feel like crying. I shout out for my dad and he quickly makes his way to my room. He bursts in asking if I am okay. I told him I heard the sounds again. He can see the legit fear in my eyes and believes me. Dad starts saying that he thinks the place is haunted, and we ask our local priest for help. The priest insists that he is no exorcist and says we should probably move. Ignore him and contact some shitty Craigslist exorcist. He looks like a massive autist. Performs rituals that look like they are stolen straight out of a movie. Heavy LARPing. Ironically, a month passes where nothing happens at all. Then it happens. I am woken up at night by a noise in my room around 11 p.m. I see it. I see him. He begins to strangle me as I cry out for help and struggle with him. The fighting continues and I am thrown to the floor. He pulls out a knife and begins to stab me in the belly. I can hear my dad bellowing through the house to my room. Dad smashes into the room and screams in horror. He fights the man and ends up caving the guy's face in with my alarm clock. Aside from the caved-in face and blood, the guy was pretty clean and wearing pretty new clothes. My clothes. I am rushed to an ambulance and sent straight into intensive care. Dad visits me after surgery and police report. They swept the whole house and found a crawl space in the living room that could be accessed by standing on a chair. The crawl space was very lived in. TLDR. Make sure you check every gap when you move into a big old house, otherwise ghosts may be the least of your worries.
Any permanent damage from the stabbing?
Standard stuff for a while. Many stitches and having to use one of them bags to piss and shit from the intestinal damage. But it was 14 years ago and I'm fully healed, albeit from a few faint scars. Psychological trauma, however. Still there to the point where I sprayed that insulation foam you can get that expands in every gap or crawl space in my current house, and all my doors have locks on them.
What happened to the guy? Did you learn anything about him afterwards? Who was he? How he got there? Why was he there? Etc.
My dad told me they took the body away to examine, and the police tried searching for clues to why he was living in the house. But aside from some random clips from magazines and a few books from our bookshelf that he was borrowing, there was nothing to identify him. Most likely he was a homeless person that invaded the house during winter, as it was unoccupied for a few months before my dad bought it.
I have never had a ghostly encounter, but I have had a demonic encounter. My friend said she saw red eyes peering at her from her closet. I did not believe her, so I went to her house, and shit you not, the feeling in her house was terrible. It felt like there was someone watching. It felt evil. I decided I would stay with her, so I was in her room with her. I fell asleep when I awoke. It was at least 1:20 a.m., and I looked at her closet, and there were two soulless eyes staring back at me, staring into my soul. I blinked, and they were gone just like that. As soon as they were gone, I did not sleep the rest of the night. It went from 1 to 6 in about 5 minutes. When my friend awoke, she did not have to say anything. She knew I saw it. I decided to call my old pastor back when I was religious and asked him to come to the house and explain the situation. My old pastor was about 60, and he looked me right in my eyes and said, "I believe you." It is not the first time I've sent this evil thing away. He went on to explain that when he was 24, he was sent with the original pastor to do an exorcism on a young man. When they got there, the man had blood-red eyes and was sitting in the closet. After he was exorcised, he said it was like a blackout. After he exorcised the house, it smelled like flowers, and the air was really fresh. He said that this should help, knowing it is all done. That was 10 years ago. I am 26, and me and her have a child on the way, and the pastor that helped us also married us, so I can say that it was a match made in hell.
It was February of 2011, smack dab middle of Kansas. Winter camping trip with my two buddies. Snow everywhere, at least 2 feet deep. We are going to be staying in my uncle's abandoned cabin. We plan on killing rabbits for our main food source, so we all bring 22s. 3 hours of hiking, and 2 miles later, me and my friends arrived at the cabin. Open up a bottle of tequila to celebrate. Fast forward 2 hours. We decided to look for some firewood. We set off in a group to look for some. No more than 20 feet away behind a bush, we find a ripped-up carcass of some sort of cow or deer. No tracks, so figure it must be old, although it looks fresh. Notice it is on top of the snow. We get a bit antsy, but eventually shrug it off. Get our firewood, return to the cabin, and cook up some hot dogs. It is 4 p.m. now. We decided to hunt for some rabbit dinner. We split up and head deeper into uncharted woods. I hear 2.22 shots in the distance, one sounding like it was from the west and one from the east like how we split up. I figure it is my turn to take a shot. See a plump cottontail rabbit. I aim down my sights and have it lined up perfectly. As I am about to take a shot, I hear, "Hey." It sounds like it came from behind a fallen tree about 5 feet away, and it was loud. It spooks me and the rabbit runs off. I say, "Fuck man, you made me miss my shot." Figuring it was one of my buddies. Realize that I heard them shoot their .22s from a good half-mile away. My eyes widen as I get freaked out. Turn around and see a mass of hair behind the fallen tree like something was laying down by it. Blink, and it is gone. I freak out and run back to the cabin. About 20 minutes later, my 2 friends show up, each with a rabbit. They laugh at me for not getting one. I tell them what happened. Their eyes widen and they both gasp. They explain to me the exact thing that happened to them. We decide to nope the fuck out and leave tomorrow. We set up a fire, eat, and then just chill till we fall asleep. All night I hear faint scratching and panting on the cabin walls. I do not want to wake my buds up and seem like a little punk. This continues for about 3 hours, every minute getting louder. It gets to the point where I do not need to wake my friends up, as the loud sound of scratching and panting on the cabin walls ascends to growling and scratching. "Coyotes?" One of my buddies says. "No, we all know what we saw. It is the thing, you know." We are all scared shitless but decide it is time to find out. All 3 of us load up our .22s, aim where the noise was coming from, open fire. After we expend our mags, we listen. Nothing. My friend had a nice group of holes in the wall big enough to look out of. I peer out of the hole. I see 2 fucking blood-red eyes in the distance. The clock strikes 3 a.m., my watch beeps. I look at my friends. Suddenly something hits the side of the cabin. Hard. We group up back to back trying to talk about happy things. 7 a.m., good amount of light. We open the cabin doors and look outside. The deer carcass is right in front of us, torn to shreds and tenderized from being thrown onto the cabin. There is a bloody imprint of where it hit. We nope the fuck back to my uncle's place. Tell him what happened. He starts to tear up. Now we are freaking out. He explains to us that a failed exorcism was performed on my great-grandmother there. She burst out of her restraints and beat the priest to near death and then ran out into the woods. I returned in 2012 and burnt it down. Since then, my uncle has sold the land. It was an experience I will never forget.
Never posted this before, and more mildly interesting than spooky, but it is real and anticlimactic. My town has an extremely low level of violent crime. The most recent murder happened a little before I was born, mid-90s, well known in the town. Teenage girl left a party one night in winter, went missing, found next spring when the snow cleared in a bean field while the owner was preparing for that year's crop. Never solved cold case, you know the cliche. My mum worked in the criminal justice field at the time. She never worked the case but had a closer connection to it than most. Several years ago, the bean field was converted to a subdivision for townhomes. One of my mum's old friend's daughter and her husband from another city bought one of the townhomes, not knowing about the property's history. Report standard ghost shit. Water faucets turning on and off, mirrors flying off the walls, cabinets opening and slamming shut, etc. Friend calls my mum. My mum is an ordained minister by this point, to tell her about it, asks for an exorcism. Mum knew about the property and put the two together. I cannot remember what it was that happened, and it might not have happened at all, but I feel like something was written down or spelled out somewhere, supposedly by the spirit that connected to the case further than what was already obvious with the location. Boring part, I did not get to come to the exorcism. Friend was a real snooty type, did not want me to be there. I still regret that. Mum exorcised the home twice, have not had a problem since. I could probably embellish that into a more fulfilling ending, but it obviously wouldn't be true. I've never told a Greentext story before, Sorry if that's incorrect.
Me, B6. Come inside to see Mother arguing with Father over a shattered coffee mug. Mother argues there's a poltergeist and we need an exorcism. Father not wanting to spend money on stupid-ass exorcism. But Mom, you promised to get me a new bike. No bike until this ghost is out. My mother is crazy. I decide I'm gonna do the exorcism myself because I want that fucking bike. Spend half the night trying to figure out how to find the ghost and kick it out. Mother keeps saying faith in the Lord can drive away evil. Father complaining and drinking. You love my folks. Through a sleepy haze, I start to become aware of a supernatural presence, remembering that awesome bike I wanted to try to tell the ghost to get out. After nothing working and still feeling the presence, I get angry. Not fully understanding exactly what I am doing, I flip my shit. I have been waiting since Christmas for a new bike, and no wannabe ghost man lady is gonna keep that bike away from me. Now in the name of Big Bird, get out. I yell this at the top of my lungs. Presence leaves, parents enter. What happened? I got rid of the ghost with Big Bird's help.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.